Most people run from the dead, I clock in with them. That's not some edgy joke I picked up to impress people at parties. Hell, after working here, I try not to go to parties at all. It's hard to stand around with a cup in your hand and pretend you're just another face in the crowd when you spend your nights counting gravestones and your days scrubbing things out of your memory. If you're listening to this, it means you want the truth. Or maybe you're one of those people who love the darkness so much you think you can reach in and pull out a piece for yourself, as if the worst parts won't stick. You clicked play because curiosity got to you the irresistible itch for forbidden things. I get it, and maybe that's the real reason we're both here. My name isn't important. Think of me as the night caretaker, the guy with the keys after everyone else has headed home. The job doesn't come with a uniform or a rule book, just a lot of silence, a pair of steel-toed boots, and the enormous company of the dead. Cemeteries are supposed to be peaceful, right? But the truth is, out here in New Mexico, the quiet is a trick. The dead aren't sleeping, they're just waiting for company. It starts easy enough. Clock in, make a couple rounds, check the fences. At first, you tell yourself it's a paycheck, nothing more. You try to ignore the way your skin crawls when a cold wind howls out of nowhere, how the night swallows sound, and how the shadows seem to pool like blood in old wounds nobody talks about. But secrets are sticky in this place. You can't leave them behind, no matter how hard you scrub. You have to understand, there's a price for knowing what goes on here after midnight. I never meant to collect stories that cling to your bones, the kind you wish you could burn out of your memory. But the dead, they have their own rules, and I learned pretty fast that some stories demand to be told. And others, well, they punish you for telling them. I'll share the stories because if I don't, I think they'll come back for me instead. I don't know if these tales are a warning or a confession, maybe they're both. But now that you're here, just remember, you have a choice. You can listen and learn what most people shouldn't. But you have to promise me one thing. Once I start, there's no going back. Not for you. Not for me. Not for anyone who walks this ground after dark. People always picture graveyards as gloomy, haunted places, but walk through one on a sunny Tuesday afternoon and you'll start to believe the opposite. The day shift is about as interesting as white bread. I'd show up in the morning with the sun already baking the New Mexico dirt, my steel-toed boots scuffing gravel as I unlocked the gates. Mostly, it was chores, running the mower over patchy grass, trimming weeds around cracked headstones, collecting faded silk flowers left by mourners long gone. Sometimes I'd exchange slow nods or brief, mumbled conversations with folks visiting loved ones. Their sadness hung in the air, but it was almost easy to float above it. You become invisible, just another part of the scenery. The work felt harmless then. Routine. Safe. You start to believe the graveyard's just an empty patch of ground that never sleeps, always swallowing the seasons and spitting up tumbleweeds and dust devils. There was even a kind of peace to it. The old sun-bleached stone, the way the wind set the wind chimes on the caretaker's porch rattling in an offbeat lullaby. For a while, I could almost pretend I was alone with the morning birds and the gentle drift of dust, just a regular groundskeeper with regular problems. But when dusk slid its purple shadow over the fence line, everything changed. The world went silent. The air thickened, and the fences ordinary during the day felt suddenly like they were locking something in rather than keeping people out. That's when the routine got complicated. Strange noises, the distant clack of pebbles on headstones, the faintest hint of laughter that vanished when I stopped to listen. On some nights, I'd swear the air itself changed temperature with every new section I crossed. I stopped making eye contact with the angels carved into the larger monuments. Their stone eyes always seemed to be watching, waiting for me to look back. Night work meant replacing bulbs and flickering security lamps, checking locks, responding to calls from the caretaker's radio that always seemed to hiss or drop out around midnight. It meant shadows that didn't match the source, footprints where there shouldn't be any, and the sensation of being watched when not even the moon was out. And then came the oddities, the things I tried to explain away. You learn the difference between the regular settling of soil and something stranger. I remember the first grave that never stayed filled. Every morning, it would be just a little sunken, as if something had exhaled from beneath the surface overnight. On the day shift, you refill it. At night, you learn not to touch it at all. Daylight is a lie out here. Everything changes when the sun goes down. It started 1 week into my job, and nothing has been normal since. They say whistling after dark calls to things that answer back. Around here, that's less of a warning and more of a promise, especially if you're dumb enough or unlucky enough to be working when the wind dies. It was my 7th night on the job, and I tried convincing myself I was growing used to the routines, the shadows, the weird anomalies that could almost be written off. September evenings in New Mexico are sharp-edged, with enough chill in the air to make the hairs on your arms stand up. I remember walking my usual route, flashlight beam carving slices out of the dark, boots crunching on pea gravel between the oldest rows. That's when I heard it for the first time. A tune, drifted on air so thin it made me second-guess my own ears. Whistling soft, meandering, playful. Just a few. Deliberate, lilting notes. At first, I thought it was some passing kid screwing around, maybe testing a myth. Stupid, really, but my rational mind clung to anything that made sense. I clicked my radio, trying to sound casual. Anyone hear that static buzzed back? Then a low-voiced Jim, the other night watch, muttered, "Yeah, thought that was you." "It isn't." A pause. The whistling picked up again, closer now, circling me, bouncing off gravestones. Sometimes it echoed. Sometimes it felt like those notes were being played right behind my ear. I forced a laugh, but my blood ran cold. Up close, the darkness twisted everything. The trees bent with the wind, and every shadow seemed a little too thick. I swung my flashlight, finger tight on the buzzer, and called out, "Hello," hoping no, praying for a rational answer. The night pressed in tighter. The tune kept looping, never quite repeating. It was almost playful, but there was an undercurrent to it, a spiteful mockery, like a bad joke only the shadows understood. I tried to follow it, boots scraping with every cautious step. The whistling always stayed just ahead, never letting me catch up, just luring me deeper into the oldest quarter, where the earth was lumpy and soft, and every headstone looked like a crooked tooth in a black, rotten mouth. Jim's voice cut in again, a whisper this time. "Don't follow it, man. Just wait it out." But curiosity's a hell of a drug, especially when you're new and you want to prove nothing shakes you. The whistling drew me to the edge of a family plot bordered by black iron fencing. That's when it stopped. Cold. The air felt suddenly pressed flat, empty of every sound, even the crickets. My breath made little clouds, and my heart pounded so loud it drowned out my thoughts. I spun, expecting what a prankster and animal there was no one. Only my reflection in the black marble headstones, ghost-like and wavering. The silence deepened until it hurt my ears. I stood frozen in place, mind stuck, body refusing to move even as every cell screeched, "Run." A metallic rasp like a hand brushing old iron. I jerked my head, but nothing moved. I called Jim again. Silence. Seconds stretched until they cracked. I could feel, more than hear, someone or something standing inches behind me, breath damp on my neck. Then, without warning, the whistling started again, this time from the far edge of the graveyard, as if whoever or whatever had been beside me had simply glided away on the wind. I left the family plot in a hurry. Maybe I looked brave on paper. I can promise you I wasn't. That wasn't the last time I heard him. Or the worst. Every place has rules, most of them make sense, even if you only follow them out of habit. But in the cemetery, the rules are different. They're not posted on a bulletin board, and nobody bothers to mention them on your first day. The old hands just expect you to learn quick. Some rules are written in blood, not ink, not that anyone will say it out loud. There's the obvious, don't whistle at night. That's been burned into my memory by the whistling man, but it didn't start or end with him. You'll catch an elbow from a veteran if you forget and start humming, especially after dark. Don't pick the white flowers. You see them on graves, even when it isn't wildflower season. They last through impossible weather, clinging to certain old stones, petals unspoiled while everything around wilts. One guy, Ray, yanked the whole bunch from a grave near the north fence. Next morning, his truck spun sideways off the cemetery road. He swore a little girl ran in front of him, except no little girl was ever found. The flowers were back on the grave before Ray's tow truck arrived. Then there's the one nobody likes to say, but we all know. Don't answer voices from empty graves. Sometimes, as the wind rattles through, you'll hear your name, but twisted long vowels, cold as earth. We had a helper, Edgar, who'd jabber back, thinking it was some of the old-timers playing tricks. He didn't last long. His last shift, he followed a voice all the way to Section 12. After midnight, The radio picked up static like someone was dragging the mic through gravel. Edgar was never seen again. HR says he quit with no notice. We know better. There are smaller rules, the kind learned through scars or warnings: never sweep the paths counterclockwise. Don't carry coins after midnight unless you want to find them stacked on your windowsill the next day. Rubbing dirt from certain headstones can leave your hands stained for days. The smell of old lilies clinging to your skin as if you've shaken hands with something undead. Maybe it sounds crazy, or maybe you've got your own stories. I always wonder how many people out there have these unwritten rules at their jobs or their homes and can't talk about them. Drop a comment if you've heard similar stories. Maybe I'm not alone, and maybe there are more cemeteries like this than anyone wants to admit. The strangest thing? These rules aren't just traditions or superstitions. They feel alive, like the ground enforces them as much as the people do. Sometimes, I think the rules are the only reason any of us get to walk out of here when the sun rises. But not everyone listens. One rookie ignored the rules. Here's what happened. Ever seen someone vanish? I have. I wish I hadn't. Alex was the new guy. College kid, buzzed hair, eyes like he'd never seen a real dead end. He laughed too much his first night, joked about ghost stories, and swaggered through orientation like nothing could scare him. I tried to warn him not in the dramatic, beware this ancient curse way, but with little nudges, the kind you hope someone's smart enough to notice. By his third shift, he'd already dismissed everything I said as weird old guy paranoia. Maybe if I'd pushed harder, he wouldn't have ended up as another rumor. It was a Monday night, slow as molasses. We were leaning on our shovels near the maintenance shed, swapping dumb horror movie plots, waiting for the radio call to do a midnight round. The air was mild, almost friendly, no wind, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. For a moment, I even believed it might be a normal shift. Then a voice crackled through Alex's radio. Not the dispatcher, not Jim. It started with a static burp, then a clear, clipped version of Alex's own voice, echoing from the far corner of the grounds. Hey, can you help me? I think I'm stuck over here. He grinned, looking at me. Did you hear that? Sounds just like me. I felt my insides twist. Don't answer it. Not tonight. He just shrugged. Maybe I dropped my spare radio earlier. Weird interference. Before I could grab his arm, he was trotting off into the dark, flashlight beam bouncing ahead of him. For a few minutes, the graveyard was nothing but shadow and the low crunch of his boots on gravel. Then silence. No shout, no cursing, nothing. I followed at a distance, dread swimming in my chest, swallowing in air laced with the coppery scent of wet dirt. I rounded the mausoleum and found his flashlight spinning on the grass, beam pointing into an empty grave, one that should have been freshly filled a week ago, but always seemed a little open. No sign of Alex. My heart started a freefall. I called out. Once, twice, my voice clipped and ugly in the thick air. Nothing. Just the scuff marks where his boots had skidded. I heard the soil sigh, like someone exhaling underground, but when I shone my light inside, there was only earth, no body, no trace but the disturbed dirt and a pair of fingerprints on the cracked edge. I radioed the office, hands shaking so hard I could barely speak. Backup came running, led by Jim, faces pale and wide-eyed. We combed the whole cemetery. No one ever found a shoe, a watch, not even footprints leading away. HR put it down as walked off the job. I knew the truth clawed deeper than that. The security footage I reviewed made it all worse. Alex walks past the camera, frame flickering with heavy static. In the next frame, he doubles back, facing the empty grave, as if answering someone out of sight. For a fraction of a second, a black shape, something long and thin, like a hand made out of mist, stretches out from the grave mouth and pulls him down so fast there's only a blur. The next frame shows nothing but emptiness and spinning dirt. We said nothing to his family. What could we even say? Around the shed, nobody joked anymore, and the night air tasted metallic for weeks. Even Jim stopped calling it paranoia. I tried to tell myself it was a trick, a glitch in the system, that maybe Alex really did walk away. But then the same grave was open the next night. And it happened again. You ever notice how the neat lines of gravestones almost look comforting, like everything here is in perfect order? That's a lie. The longer I've worked these grounds, the more I've realized the history beneath my boots isn't neat, it's hungry, restless, knotted like an old bruise under thin skin. The stories I've heard, the things I've seen, They don't add up to anything logical, but they stack like old bones in a pit. They say the land our cemetery sits on was gifted to the town back in the 1860s. You ask anyone in the mayor's office, they'll talk about generosity, a wealthy family, too much acreage to bother with, so they made it a place for burying the town's history. But you ask the old-timers, the ones who meet for black coffee and stare out at the sagging fences, and they tell a different story, one with more shadows and more teeth. Nobody gives away land that easy. Mrs. Contreras told me once, peering over her faded bingo cards. They were desperate to be rid of something. You start to spot patterns working here. Pets go missing from houses that back up to our southern wall. You see chalk drawings hidden under the swings in the park next door, always the same symbols, circles crossed with teeth, crescent moons filled with squiggles. Kids dare each other to spend nights near the old crypts, and every couple of years, the sheriff's department finds candles and burnt flowers set out in spiral patterns on the fresh graves, not the kind of thing you chalk up to bored teenagers, not after the sun goes down and the air takes on that iron taste. And then there are the stories about the caretakers who came before me. My direct predecessor, Mr. Stewart, lasted less than a year. They say he filled 4 notebooks with rambling notes about things moving under the soil. Bulges like animal backs, he wrote in one margin. Whispers in the irrigation pipes. The guys who worked with him said he started muttering phrases in Spanish that nobody could trace to any prayer or poem. Then, one night, he simply vanished. Other stories go back farther, caretakers who hung themselves in the tool shed or just walked out into the desert and never came back. A few graves out here don't have names at all, just blank stones. I used to think it was a budget thing. You might wonder if it's all tall tales, stitched together over decades of boredom and booze. Maybe, but you start finding things. I found something buried beneath the oldest headstone, a weather-beaten obelisk half swallowed by mesquite. Digging out tumbleweed roots late one evening, my trowel thunked against something dense. I brushed away brittle dirt and pulled out a little clay figurine, no bigger than a child's fist. Its mouth was open wide, carved to scream. I took it home once. By the end of the week, the pit beneath that headstone opened wider and 3 dogs in my neighborhood had disappeared. There's a reason this land was gifted to the town. The soil here seems to want secrets, and sometimes it wants witnesses, too. You learn the history in pieces, old maps with burned edges, faded Polaroids left under church doors, rumors of families that left town and sent letters asking nobody to pray over their ancestors' graves. As much as I want to walk away with the living, the pull of these stories, the way they twist into your dreams and crawl inside your quiet moments, keeps me anchored here. But truth is, the scariest nights were the ones I spent alone. Children's graves are always the hardest. Little stones, tiny teddies gone sour with weather, pinwheels that don't spin even when the desert wind gets mean. There's a corner of the cemetery where the grass never really takes, even when the rest of the place drinks up the rain. That's where I first saw her. It was past midnight, a sticky July night, and I'd been making my rounds, head down, half wishing the shift would end early for once. That's when I heard singing soft, lilting, just above a whisper. It was so quiet I thought maybe I was imagining it, until the words broke through, not English, not Spanish, but something older and somehow heavier, full of vowels that weighed down my chest. I followed the sound toward the smallest stones, the graves with faded lambs and angels. She stood there, a girl no older than 8 or 9, dressed in old black lace. The hem of her dress stained deep brown. Her hair was slicked flat against her head, and her bare feet left no marks in the dry dirt. She was turned away, hugging a soiled toy to her chest. I should have called it in, should have done anything but stand there, frozen, while sadness poured off her in waves that chilled me from the marrow out. The first time, she just cried. The sound made something in me ache, like I was mourning with her, remembering things I'd never lived. But then, just as quickly, she stopped. The air hung sharp. She twisted to look at me, and though her face was all shadows, I saw her mouth moving as if she were humming to herself. I didn't breathe until she faded, dissolving with the mist that had crept up from nowhere. It wasn't always like that. Some nights, she'd be nothing but a distant sob. Others, she'd be right there in the light from my flashlight, pale cheeks glistening. Once, She knelt at a grave, my name scratched faintly on the marker, her tiny hands tracing the letters before slamming her fists again and again into the earth. Dirt sailed, fingers bled impossible, dusty tears, and every time she hit the ground, the wind went colder. Sometimes, her sadness would shift with no warning. Once, she started humming near the swing set just outside the gate. When Jim, never the sharpest, tried to take a video on his phone, she snapped up from her crouch and screamed a sound no child's lungs could make, something between a siren and a warning bell. The phone screen splintered on its own. For weeks afterward, Jim had night terrors and one morning woke clawing at his pillow, red half-moons under his nails. But even when she was furious, it felt as if anger was only leaking through deeper heartbreak. Toys left for her melted into sludge overnight. The teddy's eyes vanished. Once, I found her cradling a pinwheel in her hands, spinning it with her breath. That time, she sang a name I almost recognized. Then, without moving her lips, she whispered clearly, "Why did you leave me here?" And, a moment later, my own name soft and accusing as distant thunder. She once spoke my name. Cold truth. That's a thing you can't pray away. Staff started dreading the children's corner. It became rule for new hires. If you see her, don't let her see your eyes. If she locks with you, even for a second, you'll wake from dreams with muddy fingernails and the taste of grave dirt clinging to your tongue. I kept wondering, who was she? Why was she here? Every record I checked came up blank, the oldest logbooks water damaged or pages torn clean out. A few regular visitors sometimes left black ribbons on the gates, never daring to speak about her. The lines between pity and terror got blurry. Some nights, I found myself hoping she'd sing. Other nights, I'd leave the entire section untouched. I tried to uncover her story. That made everything worse. There's more buried here than bodies. That's a line I'd heard the retired groundskeeper mutter more than once, usually after one too many rounds with his bottle. I laughed it off at first, but after the girl in the morning dress, after Alex, and the grave that wouldn't stay filled, I stopped laughing. My world had shrunk around those headstones, the dark reaching into every corner of my mind. It became impossible to ignore the feeling that the real history of this place was locked away somewhere, just out of sight. The opportunity came on a wind-strangled Monday at 2 in the morning, the air so dry it chapped my lips. A power outage had turned the main office black. The night supervisor dozed in his car, headlights dimmed. I tiptoed up the steps of the old administration building, heart racing, and slipped my key ring into the narrow lock of a door labeled Archives, Staff Only. Inside, there was nothing high-tech, just dust, box files marked with faded years, and the sharp tang of old paper. I squeezed my phone's light between stacks, reading through logbooks, strange complaints about hollow sounds from recent burials, a rash of pet disappearances, notes about children seen in the cemetery after hours never claimed by any family. It felt like all the legends I'd heard growing up dumped out of ghost stories and into cold, typed fact. One folder, yellowed and fat, caught my eye. Maintenance incidents restricted. It was stuffed with Polaroids, graves caved in from beneath, tunnels scrawled with symbols, and blurry shots of things scuttling just out of the camera's flash. Beneath it, blueprints, maps of the grounds that made my skin crawl. There were outlines of headstones and paths, but in heavy, secretive pencil, dozens of corridors slithered below, branching in impossible directions. Structure unexplained, attempted ceilings. Someone had scrawled over the oldest section. At the bottom of the file, in red ink, "Do not go below. Don't open what can't be closed." The sharp click of a closing door made my skin prickle. I spun, clutching the file. Suddenly, I was face to face with Bob, the groundskeeper. He was older, broader, and somehow always appeared when you least wanted company. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was low, almost a growl. "Just trying to understand. About the tunnels. About all of it." Bob eyed the papers in my hands, recognition glinting in his eyes. "You saw the blueprints," he said, not really asking. "You know why they kept them locked up. Because of what's underneath," he set his jaw, voice almost pitying. "Underneath doesn't stay underneath unless people mind their damn business. Last guy to go poking around down there ended up. Well, let's just say he made noise for weeks. There are things you're better off never meeting." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's a reason we fill in collapsed graves twice, sometimes 3 times. It's not for looks." He took the file from my hands, replacing it with a gentle grip on my shoulder. Listen, you ever hear knocking from below? You get gone. Don't follow the tunnels, don't answer voices. You keep above ground, or you won't be here long. The way he said it, I knew it wasn't just about keeping a job. I wanted to ask more, but he shook his head, already turning away. Curiosity's what got most of those folks buried here, one way or another. The file ended with a warning, don't go below. But curiosity is a disease, and mine got worse. There's a kind of madness that sets in when you let the unknown gnaw at you. That dread curiosity, it cracks your reason like old bone. I told myself I was just going to check the crypt, walk the perimeter, make sure nothing had caved in. But we both know that's a lie. After months of whispers, missing people, sulking shadows, and rules whispered too late, I needed answers. Or maybe I just needed to know there was an end to the story. It was close to 3 in the morning, a deep black that ate up even my flashlight's best efforts. The air pressed close, hotter than it should have been for a desert night in October. I found the old crypt tucked under tangled mesquite and iron fencing, the door so warped it felt like it would crack off at a touch. My hand shook as I coaxed it open. Inside, the sharp smell of mold and rust wrapped around me, heavy as a shroud. The inside wasn't large. Rows of resting places carved into the stone, names mostly faded or lost, the walls wet with drips that echoed just a beat off from my own footsteps. The silence was wrong alive, almost. I moved slow, heart tripping over itself, listening for more than rustling dust. When my boot grazed something hard, I crouched and pressed my phone light to the floor. There, half hidden, a stone ring, maybe 7 feet across, carved deep into the floor, packed with dirt except at the very center, where fresh soil had been disturbed. I should have left. Every warning in my blood was screaming my mother's distant voice, Bob's square jaw, the scrawl on the forbidden file. Instead, I pressed on, hand trailing the wall until my fingers found a seam that didn't belong. It opened with a sigh, a passage winding downward, steps barely wide enough for one careful foot at a time. The cold intensified, so did the sense I wasn't alone. Down there, the tunnels felt too old and low, so tight the walls seemed to breathe with me. My light shook in my hand. My breath steamed out in quick bursts. Somewhere ahead, a humming, then a pulsing, then the solemn drag of voices, chanting words that didn't belong to any language I'd ever learned. It vibrated in my chest, bone deep, as if the earth itself was joining the song. Torchlight flickered up from a low cavern ahead. I knelt and peered between the stones. A gathering dozens of figures, swaying in a circle carved with symbols that churned like oil in water. Some wore burial suits. A few, I swear, still had bits of earth tangled in their hair. Not all looked human. One, impossibly tall and thin, wore a funeral mask, with a mouth stretched bone white and far too wide. The chanting made the air buzz with hunger. Then I saw them. Faces that didn't belong. The rookie Alex, his skin pale and loose, eyes empty as coin slots. The girl in the morning dress, standing behind him, utterly still, lips moving as if singing only to herself. And mixed among the others, plain townsfolk I'd seen at the grocery store, at the diner, walking their dogs after dark, some staring straight up at the arching rock, some down at the shifting black earth beneath their feet. My stomach clenched as the circle broke, head snapping toward my hiding place, all eyes black and gleaming. A single voice cut through the rest, impossibly layered and wrong. Join us below. I ran. I ran before I knew it, scraping myself raw as I bolted from that impossible light. The tunnels heaving with voices, fingers that seemed to reach through cracks and drag at my coat. I followed my own shrieking, heart thundering, limbs tingling with panic, breath tearing free in broken sobs. The way back was never straight, but somehow, maybe dumb luck, maybe some part of me begging to live, I found the steps, found the crypt, burst back into the open night. I don't remember how I made it to my truck. I only remember locking the doors, hands slick with sweat and dirt, sobbing so loud I drowned out the memory of chanting almost. I saw faces I recognized and some I never want to see again. Nothing is ever quiet here now. After that night, the job was never just a job again. Even the sunrise lost its power to banish the dark from my bones. I'd clock in and feel the place watching me, not the cameras, not the regulars shuffling in with flowers and worn-out prayers, but but the ground itself, listening for a misstep. The cold lingered in me, a chill that slipped between my ribs and sat heavy at the root of my skull. Every routine, the mower, the shovels, a quick sweep of gravel, felt like walking through a minefield. I'd catch a whisper that might have been wind, or see a smudge on the edge of a gravestone and feel my guts twist, unsure if I was making things up or if something was marking me for attention. I stopped staying late, stopped answering my phone after midnight. Still, some nights I'd see figures out at the edge of the plots, standing too still, too long. Paranoia gets into your teeth. I'd lock my doors twice, triple-check the windows, catch glimpses in the corners of mirrored glass, half-thought faces peering from behind my shoulder, just for an instant. Sometimes, something small and unkind would be moved when I came home. Once I found soil caked under my nails, even though I swore I hadn't been near the cemetery that day. People ask why I haven't quit. I've started answering with a laugh that never feels convincing. Job market's rough. Besides, you don't find many postings for cemetery caretaker with benefits, free housing, and recurring nightmares included. Truth is, I don't know if leaving would matter. Some rules are for the grounds, and some are for those of us who know too much. I'm not convinced the stories stay behind the fence. So here's my advice, and it's more than superstition now. If you ever visit, don't whistle. Don't speak to anything in a grave, even if it knows your name. Don't pick the flowers, don't linger after dark, and most of all, never, ever break the silence on the second night of the moon. Sometimes, the things waking beneath the grass remember faces. Sometimes, they follow you home. If you think this is just a story, something to scare you for a little late-night thrill good, maybe that bit of distance will save you. Or maybe you're like me, already marked by the draw of places no one understands. If you feel the urge to prove it's all just tales, to poke and prod at the empty graves, at strange voices, at old tunnels, just remember how many names never end up on the stones. I keep the old rules close. I add new ones to the list every year. There's never a shortage of things to be wary of out here. And as I record this, I hear that whistling again. Not every story deserves to be heard. Some want to be told, sure, like they're scratching beneath your skin, desperate for light. Others want to be forgotten, buried so deep even the roots can't reach them. The dead out here know the difference, even if I never do. So think about it before you come hunting for secrets. Don't say I didn't warn you. Listen to the end. Replay your favorite parts. Share it with your bravest friends, but understand, nothing in this place stays buried for long, and nothing you learn here ever really goes away. If you've got your own rules for surviving places that feel wrong after dark, or if you've seen things you still can't explain, share them below. If enough of us write them down, maybe we can piece together the warnings that help us all last a little longer. The night likes to pick at the lonely, but together, we might keep its hands off at least for a while. So drop your stories, your theories, your nightmares from the other side of the fence. Let's see who survives the night. I keep looking over my shoulder as I talk, half expecting to see the girl in black lace, the flicker of hollow eyes in the corners, or the new rookie whose real name I never got to learn. Maybe the next time you visit a grave, you'll feel that chill, to the prickly sensation of someone watching, waiting for your name. I never planned to be the warning at the end of someone else's story. But if you never hear from me again, you know why. Some doors should never be opened, and here, even an ordinary key can turn the world inside out. The whistling is louder now, almost close enough to make out the melody. Maybe tonight, it finally finishes the song. Maybe I'll be another face in that circle underground, chanting for an audience that thinks they're just passing through. But for now, the story's yours. Keep it locked tight in your bones. And if you hear whistling after dark, keep walking. Don't look back. Don't say I didn't warn you.